Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto. Show me the crypto.
In a world on the brink of disruption, two men will bring you clarity by interviewing some of the most intelligent and influential names in the blockchain world. Welcome to Show Me the Crypto with your hosts, Wade Patterson and Ulf Lonergan.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Show Me the Crypto. My name is Wade Patterson.
And I'm Ulf Lonergan.
We're a couple of friends from Canada who love learning about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and we're happy you're along for the ride. Whether you're a crypto virgin or you know your way around the block, we hope our interviews with some of the most intelligent and influential people in the blockchain space help deliver you with value. And on this episode, we're joined by founder, collector, and investor Brett Shear, aka Blockchain Brett. Brett began working with ConsenSys in 2016 and discovered NFTs in late 2017. Today, Brett is co-founder and partner of Palm Tree Crew Crypto, which is a thesis-driven venture fund for the crypto creator economy. And he is one of the most trusted and knowledgeable voices in the Web3 music scene. Brett, welcome to Show Me the Crypto.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited about this conversation. And where I want to start is going back to the fact that you discovered NFTs in late 2017, which is years before most people. We were talking before we hit record, the fact that Ulf and I learned about it in early 2021, and we thought we were early. So I have to ask, what was it like back then when nobody knew about this and you were actually collecting these NFTs?
Yeah, it was at that time, it was even harder to force yourself or push yourself to spend money on NFTs. It was just early, whether it's CryptoKitties or early crypto art, it just seemed way crazier at the time. So it was harder to that's why I guess things were much less expensive.
Yeah, no doubt.
What gave you the conviction though? What kind of led you to think this is going to be a worthwhile investment, or was it even investment? Were you just kind of trying to support the artists who were out there doing their thing?
It was a combination of things. I had the conviction kind of from coming from the tech side a bit, not that I'm a developer or super or technical like that, but just understanding the primitives of it wasn't called an NFT then, it was just a 721 ERC 721. And storing files and IPFS and referencing that to the token and having unique tokens was kind of something I had already seen from other companies, other projects building in ConsenSys, notably Ujo, which is actually a music focused one back then, was really early to that architecture. They actually had one of their developers was one of the authors on ERC 20. So they were super ahead of the curve. So I kind of just understood the tech. And then while I was at ConsenSys, was just getting a pulse on the space. I mean, a big part of it was just knowing who all the other founders were, all the projects, all the products being built, everything was super early. So just keeping a good pulse on everything. And I came across pretty much CryptoKitties, but really for me, when I got super excited, was super rare with crypto art. I came across that and was oh wow, this concept of collecting content or art, for art makes so much sense, especially since art is already kind of collected like this. Physical art is literally collected. So I was thinking, here comes digital art, and obviously it actually needs NFTs, a super novel solution for something that you couldn't have sold a digital file before, and just made a bunch of sense. And then I dove in and learned about the artists, learned about kind of just connected emotionally with the art itself, the content, and went from there.
And so this is going back, obviously, we mentioned 2016, you're getting into this, and you might have been jumping ahead past that a little bit. But what's the full story from then till now? What have you been doing in this space to get to today?
Yeah, a few things. Since that was like kind of going into 2018 when I was really getting into like collecting. And I was definitely one of those like earlier people, even at ConsenSys, to be like excited about NFTs and talking about it, and like spending money on it. Yeah, so I mean, I ended up staying at ConsenSys through like fall of 2018. But I mean, it's not like NFTs got popular by the time I left or anything. Like I was still kind of just doing it as just a passion for fun, was still collecting. And then into 2019, I co-founded a company called Fleek, which is developer infrastructure, like a Firebase analogy for Web3, like using IPFS for hosting and storage and using ENS domains for domains. So like really easy to build sites. And I was still like just being like getting even more and more basically like degen for NFTs, like buying more crypto artists. It was in 2019 when like crypto voxels came out, I bought land in crypto voxels and like built my art gallery in there, and some other plots. So I thought, maybe one day I'll build a house in the water in crypto voxels or, and then like other metaverses came out like Decentraland, eventually like stuff like collectibles, which eventually caught on to like the collectible stuff. So just like expanding throughout all the way through like mid 2020 into like more and more NFTs. And then it was around mid 2020 when like started feeling like this kind of exponential uptick in NFTs, which like in retrospect and compared to 2021 was like not, it was a speck, but yeah, it was enough for me to feel like I started getting like secondary sales. Like people were like, I started getting bids and offers on like some stuff I'd bought from 2018, 2019, and was just like, whoa, this is crazy. like I can't believe I was actually like, right. Like I can't believe it. So pretty much like, other major kind of like terms or like topics started coming of interest and coming to like, the crypto space, most notably like creator economy. Like that kind of started becoming a term in like mid 2020. I was getting thrown around. Because like it expanded beyond NFTs and like it was about content, it was about artists, it was about like social tokens came into the picture, right? Which is like another subcategory. Like things like that were kind of starting to expand it. Stuff like Forefront launched, which is like that education community for social tokens. FWB launched, which is like literally like one of the first major social tokens. And like Seed Club, which is for creating social tokens. So like I joined those things as like a early member or a contributor and like was just keeping up with it. And by the end of 2020, I had actually moved back to Miami because of the pandemic. I was in New York throughout for like ConsenSys and most of that stuff, and then moved back to Miami where I'm from and was like living with my brother, who my brother Miles is like, got his own stuff. He's in his own world as well. Like he has been in the entertainment industry forever and manages Kygo and built the Palm Tree Crew brand with Kygo. And was like starting to see like the overlap and catching them up to speed. And I'm like, guys, this is about to explode. Like creator economy, NFTs, like you guys are, all these creators, like we should be thinking about this stuff. And kind of like it was pretty much that moment in like the beginning of like January, like 2021, beginning of last year, where like Blau had his like massive sale, right? His like album sale, where like the whole entertainment industry woke up to NFTs like heavy. So like I was here, with Miles and with Kygo, and like we were like, let's go. So like we like worked on and got a Kygo drop going, and there was like a lot of other people in the Palm Tree Crew like network and that were friends that like were like starting to come to us being like, how do we do NFTs? How do we get into this stuff? So like I worked on the weekends NFTs on Nifty Gateway as well, and like we did Jimmy Buffett's and like a bunch of like pretty sick artists. Yeah, I mean, Palm Tree Crew basically like invests in early stage companies and bridges like culture. That's kind of like the MO of it. I was excited about that. And we ended up teaming up and starting Palm Tree Crew Crypto, which is crypto fund, early stage crypto fund focused on the creator economy, crypto creator economy. So yeah, that's kind of where my passion has naturally grown over time and where I feel like the biggest opportunity is. And I love focusing on that and investing and working with founders and companies in the space. And then, yeah, I guess like that kind of rolls into music NFTs because it was around that time, like that was like March of last year and April, where like all these big musicians were releasing these like audiovisual NFTs. Like they were like kind of like Gen 1.5 music NFTs kind of, where like the way they would release is by collaborating or using some visual, like, or internally having some visual artists create their assets. And then it was kind of more like art with music, but with like a big name musician on it. And that was like a huge trend. Nifty Gateway pretty much caught most of that. And you had like major artists, I mean, Kygo Weekend, for example, but also, I mean, it was like, right, like Diplo and Calvin Harris and Deadmau5. And I mean, the list goes on and on. But at that same time, like kind of low key behind the scenes, basically on Zora, there was like this like independent artist, pure like kind of Gen 2 like music NFTs, which is just like song files. Some of them didn't even have cover images. They just had like the wave, file cover, like just audio and full songs. And it was kind of like, most of them would have like a cover image or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it was just full songs and music and independent artists. And that was kind of really like because I've all these kind of musicians I was talking with, and I was thinking about music a lot. I had already even beforehand, like thought like, all right, like NFTs are going to move to more like formats, more types of content. But it was that like when I was talking to musicians and they were like, I want to release NFTs. How do I do it? And I'd be like, yeah, we got to find you like a visual artist first. And it's just like that like it started to frustrate me so much that like musicians, especially some who I think of personally as like the best artists or like my favorite artists, were like not able to have their own lane in creativity to like release their content and had to depend on or collaborate or work with. It just like didn't feel sustainable, and also didn't feel like right. Like it's like a creative right to use NFTs. So that definitely pushed me like to have a lot of passion already for like music NFTs before, like in the early days. And then just started digging into Zora, digging into Catalog, which was like pretty much the first interface to focus on music collectibles, music NFTs. Like learned all the artists, learned everything and got super into it. So I would say like music NFTs since then has been my biggest focus of collecting. But have also continued to do like to collect all sorts of NFTs.
It's interesting you bring up near the end there about, music artists not having their own lane when it comes to NFTs and how to use that. Wade and I have had a discussion about, different types of NFTs and different uses. And, we're always wondering as creators ourselves and the media, the type of content that we output through our podcast, we do it in video format, we do it in audio format, and, we can accompany visuals. But, especially we recently talked to Daniel Allen, who's a musician and putting out his work as NFTs. And I just think it's an interesting subject to bring up, which is, well, do you need visuals to go along with it if your content is audio? And if you don't put visuals along with it, are you limiting the value of your content? And I mean value from the standpoint of the collector. Like, does a collector want to show off their NFT, and can they not do that if there's no visuals to go along with it? So I'd love to just hear you sort of expand on that a little more and what maybe some of these solutions are and the challenges as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm confident that like all types of content will have NFT infrastructure, like we'll have, the ability to basically be valued directly. Just like art, just like crypto art, just like music NFTs has been underway. and it has how it's moving on to more forms of content. I mean, you have videos on Glass, right? You have Glass at XYZ. You have article NFTs on Mirror, right? You have it's on and on. I mean, actually, I know, yeah, basically by the time this comes out, it'll have been like a month, but podcast NFTs have started, right? Like really, really small subset. But I was on the Mint podcast with Adam Levy, and he released our podcast as an NFT because we've been talking about this topic a lot. And he sold like 30 something editions at he sold for like an ETH in total, pretty much, which is like pretty crazy concept. Like people probably don't realize or think that like podcast episodes can be valuable or like are worth collecting, right? But they are. There's like a lot of reasons why someone would find something meaningful, and that can translate to monetary value. But yeah, I mean, I think like in the case of, like whether it's audio or visual or it doesn't really matter. Like any type of content someone can find meaning and connection and build relationships with the creators. So no, I don't think there's any limitation, although it is definitely interesting, like to say, people make the argument like visual art's so easy to like see and you get it right away. So like, that's why it makes so much sense and it works, but like that won't work for music. And it's like, people were saying the same thing in 2018 when it was a JPEG, and it was like, you're not going to buy a JPEG. Like it's just, it's not valuable, or like it's like, you don't actually, it's just a file, right? Like I can right click save as, like that was the argument then. Right. And it's like, they were wrong. I think like that it's a similar like barrier to think of like, all right, like just because it's an audio file doesn't mean it can't be like valuable. Like it's the same concept as like just being able to own a file and like being able to value it directly and own it and collect it. So like it's very much the same thing across whatever it is, whatever format it is, whether it's, art, visual art, audio, podcasts, articles, episodes, film, whatever. Right. I think like basically the way we consume it will evolve. You might like the way we look at crypto art isn't going to be necessarily the same way we look at or consume music NFTs. Cause like, yeah, it is mostly audio. Like the visual component isn't as important. Sure, the cover art can be beautiful and it's awesome, but like, that's not necessarily what people want to show off. They want people to be able to listen to the music they collect. So like more in the listener format, like whatever format suits that be using in order to like consume that. So yeah, I would say for music players is going to be the way we show off, or playlists and the way we show off our collections and listen and check out other people's stuff.
So is it fair to say, because I'm trying to wrap my head around it, right? From a value standpoint, why would I mint my podcast? And is it something that I don't need to know why someone would want to purchase our NFTs, and rather it's about putting it out to the world? And so that the option is there for those who may see value in it, versus me as the creator trying to figure out what the value is? Or on the flip side of that, is there an argument to say, well, if everybody does that and just starts minting, if all creators just start minting everything they create because they can, is it going to oversaturate the market? And is it going to appear as like just a money grab? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, basically everything had, like, all content has or in the form of NFTs has the potential to be valuable, but doesn't necessarily make it valuable. Right. And the things that make it valuable is like essentially, I guess, interchangeable with like the word meaning, right? Like people finding meaning in something like, so, and I think that's really kind of like, from the connecting with the audience standpoint. I think even before that, from the creator, from the artist side of it, it really comes down to like independence, creative freedom, self-sustaining, like being able to own what you create in its kind of rights, but also being able to like release how you want, when you want, in whatever format, and like basically giving yourself the opportunity to have like a deeper connection and relationship, be appreciated by people that follow you or you know, consume your content. Like there really isn't like a better feeling probably than like as a creator having someone like literally like directly appreciate what you've created and being like, this is worth something to me, right? Like it's something that only like pretty much only like physical artists have been able to kind of have, and like in the digital sense even more difficult to have. And like with NFTs, we're starting to like experience that. So yeah, I think like from the artist kind of creator perspective, there's that like that creative freedom and that like ability to like have your work valued directly. That is like so powerful. And I think from like the kind of audience side of it or collector side of it, there's like just, it's a lot of meaning. And like the meaning is basically like specific pieces of content you like. So like, you know, obviously the podcast market is like, podcast NFT market is very nascent or maybe not even existent yet, right? Like there's been like a couple NFTs. But like, for instance, like if I enjoy the podcast and I think it's amazing, I learned something from it. Maybe it's about music NFTs, and I learned about music NFTs and I went and I bought a music NFT because of it, that I love that song and like, and that artist is growing, and you know, it's like the result is meaningful to me. Like maybe the person that spoke about the music NFTs is someone that I follow and like I'm a fan of, or like, you know, I listen to and continue to navigate the space with their advice. Like I find meaning in that podcast, right? Like that. And then beyond that, or the same thing for music, right? If I'm listening to a song, like I love the song, like, you know, that's enough to be meaningful. The song just sounds great, but also like what the song stand for, what are the lyrics, like, you know, and then of course behind that, like the artist, the creator themselves. So like for you guys putting out a bunch of podcasts, like you guys have an audience, you have people that appreciate your content, like they value like you, right? Same way as like someone values X copy. Like no matter what X copy, there's a floor price, basically. Like there's at least worth something, right? Like it doesn't matter, but like there are certain ones that have even deeper meaning, and like there's a reason why you'd want to collect or like own that specific piece. But that like kind of exposure to the artist, like the relationship with, you know, yeah, like that, the meaning that from the artist and the connection to that. And I think alongside that, I was just like was starting to say is like relationship is this like deeper relationship beyond anything we ever had, that like is a two-way signal of between like an artist putting something out, a creator putting something out, and then an audience saying that's valuable and I want to own it. And like the signal goes between both of them. And it's like, it's a really strong relationship, like for a creator to receive from someone that, hey, like you think my work is valuable. It's way beyond anything like a like or a follow or like anything we currently have in our system digitally. That is like just very deep. And like, you know, especially if it's your first NFT or whatever, as you grow, like, you know, people as like artists will look and see who their collectors are and follow them and DM them and say thank you and have relationships with them. And like, you know, it's like, it's a very meaningful thing, that relationship. So I think when you kind of bake it to that, there's like this kind of also another layer beyond that, where it's like this signal aspect, right? Where like if I started collecting like that, all those things I just said that are meaningful, maybe about Daniel Allen, right? And one of the songs I bought, someone might come later on and realize what I've already realized, think the same thing, and then like be like, oh, cool. Like there's like Brett figured that out. Brett must be pretty cool, you know, like, yeah. Like Brett thought the same things I thought. So like, we're like connected. He thinks it's cool. So like, basically when I'm first, like people after me are going to think like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, Brett's a curator, right? Like Brett's early, like he understands it. He saw these things even before me. Right. And like, It's just, there's like that another layer of like connection, social signal, meaningfulness. And all of that kind of like can translate to monetary value for sure. I mean, like we spend money on things that mean stuff to us. So someone that can afford it is pretty likely to act on that. But yeah, I don't necessarily think the only way to connect with artists over time is going to be just by buying NFTs, but it's definitely like a foundational starting point.
Ulf, do you realize our audience has been either watching or listening to this episode for 20 minutes?
20 minutes? No, they should probably subscribe.
Yeah, they should subscribe. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you comment and turn on notifications. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and a review.
We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So go check out the episode description. You can find all that information below. And we have an update on the NFT, don't we?
That's right. We didn't previously mention this, but this NFT for our OG supporter is a one of one. There will only be one of this kind ever minted, and we have a few surprises for the person who purchases it. The link is in the episode description.
And back to the episode.
It's super fascinating because what we're talking about is just the next evolution. It's the next layer, and it requires some, like Ulf and I said, you know, it's not simple to grasp right away. It takes a few minutes, and I've kind of come around and I'm starting to understand that piece of it. But I want to dive a little deeper into what you're talking about with relationships and a couple different aspects with that. So the first is that going back to March, April 2021, you talked about working with The Weeknd, working with Kygo on their drops and that type of thing. It felt like to me at the time, I mean, every Nifty Gateway drop was selling out in a matter of like minutes or whatever, depending on the format. And looking back on that time, it did feel a little bit like people were jumping at the opportunity who maybe didn't stick around the space. And that's not speaking for all artists. I think some have stuck around, but you know, I remember I bought one of the like Halsey's drops, but I haven't heard her talk about NFTs or anything like that since. Maybe she plans to in the future. I'm not sure, but you know, so that was kind of the feeling. So what I'm curious about as kind of part one of this question is when you were consulting with those artists at the time, considering that you've been so forward thinking in the space, were you also trying to say like, let's not just tackle the music and the visuals, but like, could there be some form of utility as well? Like, were those part of the conversations at all at that point? And then the second part I want to tag onto this question is, you know, in terms of the relationship expectations. So if I'm a collector and I'm thinking, wow, this is my chance to build a more meaningful relationship with an artist, is that an unfair level of expectation to put on the artist? Like for the artist, what if they want to keep their fans at a bit of arm's length? Like they want to have their personal life and they're building the music, that kind of thing. I knew I threw a lot at you there, but feel free to tackle it how you'd like.
Yeah. I mean, I think like for the kind of major artists that like coming into the space is like, I think these like people that have kind of like the system that currently exists for creators that has like worked well for them and that they've like succeeded, right? Made a living or even better. Like they're smart and they want to be, they're ahead of the curve, like, and they see it and they start to understand it and they want to be involved, right? And they want to participate. And there's very genuine excitement for the innovation and genuine like meaning and like long-term like goals, right? But like I also think it's like it ends up being kind of difficult to like do in a very sustainable way just by the way that like kind of NFTs are sort of like disruptive to like some of those existing tools, right? Or systems. So like, you know, like basically if you're a major artist and like you're looking at the space and you want to like release, like you're going to look at the current standing and try to figure out how to kind of start fitting in. Right. And like, so if you're a musician and you release a Nifty Gateway in March, April, June, whatever, like during that time, it was likely an audio visual piece, right? Those musicians are also very likely like signed by labels, right? And are not independent artists. So the way that they distribute their music is like decided by the label, right? So like can't necessarily follow in and do and like participate in like the next trend or whatever of pure music, which is why they were kind of using the opportunity to get in and be excited about NFTs. But yeah, I think it's sort of like a dilemma. Like it's tough for them, but also I love to see like people trying and getting involved and doing things. So yeah, I mean, I think like for me, the things that I'm like most bullish on is the native side of stuff, because like I want people to like depend on this space and build their career in it. Like there's nothing better than a Daniel Allen story, right? Or like an X-Copy story where it's like, you know, yeah, you made music before. Yeah, you made art before, but like, this is where you started in this ecosystem. Your whole life is depending on like you putting on NFTs, like them selling, like you continuing to grow in this space, continue to connect with more collectors, continue to experiment and figure out the next steps and help evolve the space, all alongside while like being a participant with all of the companies in the space and the builders and like experimenting alongside this, you know, early innovative experimental community, right? So like for me, those things have like more historical value. They're like, I like, yeah. So I love like the natives, right? For that reason. And but also at the same time, bigger artists have an opportunity to bring in more eyes, right? More exposure. So like, it's good to have a mix. And like, I think it's reasonable and it's hard to like expect someone that like already has a lot going on and already like things are working for them to like just cut ties and go full on NFTs. Like they have to kind of figure it out over time and work with like within the systems that they're already a part of. So yeah, it'll probably take some time on that front. And I assume it'll trickle up back again, right? Like it's a matter in time until an artist the size of some of those Nifty Gateway artists are starting to think about, hey, maybe this market, this music NFT market over here is actually at a maturity point in which like this makes sense for me to focus, right? Versus some of the other alternatives. And then for the last part, for the utility stuff, you know, I think like art is utility, right? Like I think adding utility and doing things in the aftermath of an NFT and continuing to like figure out how to like engage with and grow the community and continue to get them excited about the content is obviously a great thing. Like people should definitely do that. But I also think that like, as a musician, when you put out a song, when you make music, like you're making beautiful art that people appreciate. And over time, as you grow and continue to release art, should continue to be more and more appreciated. Right. So like, for instance, like we don't expect painters to throw IRL events and have like their physical collectors come show up and meet each other. Like, right. Like Picasso, like Basquiat's are worth a fortune because like people understand the meaning of his painting and it means a lot and people want to collect it. So yeah, I think like in that aspect, like I love it when people do creative things, add things, especially when we're in a digital world. So like there's opportunities to integrate. I think more digital experiences or more access or things like that. But you know, I think like let's nail creating really great content first. But yeah, over time, I think there will be a lot more tools and ways to like tie in and, you know, kind of do more like, I think once people start to realize that like there is already utility that's like baked into it, right? Like the meaningness, like the connection, the fact there's other collectors, so other collectors know who I am, like I have a relationship with the artist, but like, it's just not really that well serviced yet, right? Like it's not like social media native to crypto is like just starting, like, but yeah, imagine like that day when like there's an Instagram, like, you know, popular social media app and like, you know, Daniel Allen's super huge and like right at the top of his support collector list is Blockchain Brett. And everyone knows me as like one of the best music curators, right? Like, you know, obviously that'd be a nice hypothetical, but like, I'm like, the point is just like, there is a lot that's meaning that is kind of utility that's happening already. on chain and like all these relationships, everything that's being built. It's just a matter of kind of surfacing it and creating those like people realizing it and feeling it through the apps and interfaces they use regularly.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to bring that up because a lot of the time in this space, you kind of got to think 2 steps ahead and like use your imagination a bit as to where things might go. Because I think to maybe explain some of the projections you're putting out there, it could be that us as if we put ourselves in the collector's shoes, let's say we buy NFTs, maybe the artist doesn't provide, one-to-one experiences or even specific, benefits, again, at the one-to-one level for any holders of their NFTs or something like that. But however, on the utility side, maybe just because I own that NFT, I still get a level of access to a certain community on a certain social media platform that is super popular. And now I'm part of a little collective of people who are like-minded and I already relate to because we're already all fans. It's almost like in this specific, example of the future, it's kind of like being a part of a fan club that I can feel connected to the artist, even if they're not doing that specific one-to-one thing for me that they've promised as part of their utility of their NFT. So I think that is a good point you raised, that we don't know where things will go, but by being involved now and by supporting those artists and creators who you believe in now, who knows what perks or, meaning you're going to get out of it in the future as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's 100 times better than anything we have in Web 2, right? Like the relationship is way stronger. Like I consider myself like nearly best friends with some of the musicians I collect, which is like something I've never experienced with other early artists I found on Spotify or whatever, right? Like, or on blogs like that when I used to, scour music blogs and look for early music, right? Like it's crazy. Like, one of the first people I've collected is Matthew Chaim, who's the founder of Songcamp. And like we started talking way back then about what the future would be. And, and then I'm seeing Songcamp grow and I'm becoming part of the community. And then, we're catching up regularly, and then we met in person, and now we're hanging out. Now we still catch up a lot. And like, yeah, it's just like Daniel Allen has become a very close friend of mine. Like, it's pretty amazing. I felt it with early crypto art too. Like I started like Coldy, I've collected since the early days. Like I've hung out with Coldy like 5 times in person now. Like we partied in New York together. Like, like he's like the coolest guy. Like we've had great times. Like, because like, yeah, I mean, without like having been able to appreciate their art and like be on the same page and like kind of create that signal, there's no way that would have been able to form. So yeah, I think it's like, there's that opportunity. That's much greater.
So switching gears a bit, we've been talking lots about music and music NFTs in the space. But earlier this year, you wrote a Mirror article on creator DAOs. And I'd love to know what is a creator DAO? Can you explain that for our audience and get into that a little bit?
Yeah. So a lot of the inspiration behind that was really like Overstim, was like Daniel Allen's. I know we've been talking about him a lot already, but is his creator DAO, really. I worked with him and Cooper on that. And we like, put a lot of thought into how to release it and the aftermath of it and how to continue it and where it goes. So that was a lot of inspiration. And around that time, there was a lot of other musicians that also were like essentially standing up creator DAOs at the time, right? I think Halik Mal did one, Ibn Inglor, a series of different ones, probably like a dozen plus. And basically what it was to me is kind of like this, basically creating like an extra layer around like your existing NFT assets that is like a more sort of broad form of exposure in a smaller unit that's like lower denominated, so more accessible and essentially earnable. So like basically like imagine taking some percentage of all the NFTs that you create. So like your ownership of NFTs you create is basically the primary sale and the secondary sales. And taking some cut of that, in Daniel Allen's case, it was half. And then like directing it to a treasury that is managed by token holders, like ERC20s in this case, so all identical holders. And what that does is like, as you continue to sell, basically grow and create NFTs and sell NFTs, essentially that token holder community, in this case, owns half of all the NFTs from the artist's perspective. Half of what the artist owns, right? Which basically is like a diversified exposure to like everything, right? So like I'll be as a big collector and super enthusiast, like going in, checking, like looking at every single Daniel Allen track he releases, whether it's on sound or on catalog. And like, I buy one-on-ones, I buy editions, et cetera. Right. But not everyone might be as diehard and might just be into like just Daniel Allen as a whole and wants like some exposure. Right. So like that is something where it's like, oh, this is like something you can buy. That's kind of like more of a diverse set. And then, in addition to that, it's like more accessible usually because like the chances are this identical token and the amount that there are is less expensive than like an edition to NFT, which is in this current state, like the lowest form, like the lowest priced asset to create a relationship and be a part of Daniel Allen or get exposure to Daniel Allen, right? And then I would say the other major opportunity it creates is like this earning ability that is like less so, that is like an interesting like scalability tool, right? Where like for actions that people might take in the community or that are not yet in the community that want exposure to Daniel Allen might be able to do things to help, proliferate or like further advance like the Daniel Allen community and earn tokens for that. And which is like, which is what essentially would be like almost equivalent of equity in the artist, which is like what all this kind of is. So yeah, I think those are kind of like some of the benefits that I feel like are really exciting about it. And in Daniel Allen's case, I think it was executed pretty well. I think like we've definitely learned some challenges since then. And there's ongoing like thoughts that have been provoked about social tokens since then as well. Yeah, I mean, I think challenges, for instance, liquidity. Sorry. The first thing would be like, I would say pricing, right? Like misaligned pricing, like valuation of the token, right? Like you see in the stock market sometimes the prices are wrong, right? like it definitely happens in DeFi, and even in ETH and Bitcoin and like the major, $1 trillion assets, right? Like they're sometimes mispriced. It happens in DeFi, like it's guaranteed to happen in a brand new nascent social token category, right? Like these things they're not properly valued, and like for someone to the same way like our NFTs in 2018 weren't being properly valued, right? It's like people look at in order for someone to look at like that social token and to grasp the concept, oh, this is cool. I have diversified exposure to all the assets. I have, this was like a pretty good deal, a good price on the way in. And like, maybe I can earn some more or go do some things, or other people will be able to earn it and it'll grow the ecosystem. Like to like kind of grasp that and understand that, at least a minimum, like the value of the NFT assets and half of it should at least equal the value of like the outstanding tokens. It's just not connecting, right? It's not there. So unfortunately, like it's just I think it's just a growth thing, like it over time, maturity. And then the other thing is liquidity, right? Like there's basically liquidity requirements with tokens that like just pretty blatantly, I mean, like on Uniswap, in order to have a price, you need to have 50 ETH liquidity, which is not a small amount for, an artist social token. A bunch of people in the community came together, grouped together and provide liquidity, but we didn't get to that much liquidity. So like basically still to this point, there's an ETH to overstim conversion. You can back into and do the math, but like as far as like displaying and having it part of the site, making it super obvious and apparent and showing the treasury and making it like this kind of presentation to help people kind of align on pricing and like valuation and stuff, it's tough. So those are some things we ran into that are definitely solvable. And I think the other thing as well is something to think about is like every time you go to release something, you create something where there's exposure to the audience and artists, but between them, there's just always going to be this moment of like, should this just be an NFT, right? Mm-hmm. Like, is it time or am I ready for a social token? The way I kind of look at it is it's similar to like how a company over time eventually IPOs. It's like a maturity thing, right? Like similar to like token distributions, right? How Uniswap eventually over time released the Uni token, and like all the other examples of that, right? And it's a process. Like it's the same kind of thing for like an artist. I look at like the potential in the future of a social token as basically being this kind of major maturity point to like essentially meet the demand beyond the supply that you're able to do sustainably with your with like that you want to do and keep the high quality and the of your art that you're putting out and the amount you're putting out.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Super interesting concept. I want to go back to one of the things you were talking about there, which was the opportunity to earn for those who are part of the community. What are some specific examples of ways that you're seeing or potentially could see community members earning these types of tokens?
I mean, yeah, anything that adds value to the community. Mastering, like in the situation of music, I would say like maybe you're helping mastering the songs, maybe you're helping with design of some of the files for cover art, or maybe it's a generative collection, project management, marketing. Maybe you're starting to help and you're being a big part of proliferating recent NFT sales and things that are available, like there's basically Web3 type assistance as well as kind of becoming like a bigger category, right? Like you can reward collectors. If someone's buying a bunch of NFTs, you can give them you can give them tokens. Like you can reward advisors that are helping you think through supply dynamics or pricing and just kind of helping you day to day on like what to release on, connecting you with platforms, putting you in the forefront. Helping you with marketing on the Twitter, the crypto Twitter sphere, right? Like, more powerful in numbers, and like anyone that wants to step in and help in all these different ways should have opportunities to basically like earn in the form of equity in the artist.
And is that something, for those who maybe aren't so familiar with participating in a DAO and how you get rewarded with these tokens, is that something that the members of the DAO determine up front and what that reward's going to be, and then finding who those individuals are going to be? Or are you talking about it more as like a bonus type of reward that not expected? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still early. Like you couldn't really point to that many examples that are like highly functioning, rewarding all those different things I just said in one community, like in an automated way, or in a very super community driven way. Like that definitely does happen. And I think it's also, there's a leeway to another point where it's like kind of communities that I'm starting to see that aren't necessarily centered around like an artist, but a group of artists or a collective, which is pretty exciting as well. But yeah, I would say like to start, like probably pretty manual, artists paying attention to things, rewarding people directly in small increments, setting a threshold in the community that if there's a basically if we want to go and do something beyond a certain value and spend over a certain amount or give a certain amount, then this should be taken to a proper vote based on token holders outside of maybe like some Discord thumbs up from the community. So like setting thresholds for amounts and values and what should be given. And then I think ideally going from like a single artist paying attention to potentially like sort of like subcommunities with certain goals to, full kind of, sub like focused groups that like maybe one group is focused on marketing, one's focused on, mastering or producing, like all these different kind of categories. And this is obvious, those examples are pretty specific to like a music creator DAO, but I see that's probably how it evolves. And over time, maybe even delegation, right? Like certain people that are very good and have good takes about those things, or maybe those committees will be able to have more vote and more power in the community to help make decisions as like basically those thresholds and those processes become more smooth, can be like kind of pitched in by more voices.
So Brett, this has been incredibly informative conversation. Just again, a mind-blowing concept that I feel like we're just in the early stages of. We have a section at the end of every interview that we ask every guest the same 3 questions. So we're going to get to that in a second. But before we do that, I want to ask about your own personal NFT collection. Cooper, we were asking him about kind of how big his is and everything like that. So for yourself, in terms of like number of NFTs that you own, that's part 1. And then the second part is, what is your most coveted NFT if you had to choose one favorite?
Yeah, I'd probably own like 2,500 NFTs. Then my most coveted one, takes a little bit of context. I'll try to say it quickly. It's called Decentralized by Coldy. It's a layer in the masterpiece for Supper. That's the Genesis art piece on Async Art. Coldy's Decentralized series is his most iconic one that represents all these different characters that basically inspired the ideologies behind crypto, from Vitalik Buterin to Edward Snowden and Julian Assange and Satoshi Nakamoto, and bakes those ideologies into his mixed media 3D art. That piece combines all the existing ones up to that point in 2019 into one 15-state layer that can be changed at any time by me as the owner. So I could go and make a transaction to update it from Edward Snowden to Vitalik, and it would change in like the masterpiece for Supper, where that everyone looks at.
Cool.
That was also one in 2019, was the 4th highest selling piece of crypto art at that time. And was like a crazy hour extended bidding war.
Crazy.
That sounds super cool. I actually haven't heard of a NFT with that sort of utility behind it for the owner to sort of control what's being shown. That's really sweet.
Yeah, it's cool.
And especially that early stage to be that innovative thinking. That's really cool. Awesome, Brett. Well, as I mentioned, we like to ask every guest of Show Me the Crypto the same 3 questions. It's a segment we call You Had Me at Crypto. Ulf's going to ask you those questions.
All right, Brett, you ready?
I think so.
All right. The first question, who is your favorite person to follow in the crypto space?
That's so hard to choose.
I know,
one.
Right? It is.
Feel like, just
you can toss out a couple if you need.
One really good friend and then a bunch of enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love like what's going on, and like I think people that are like super native to like kind of NFT evolution, and like sort of like a lot of the stuff that I've been most excited about recently is like the CCO stuff. So yeah, I mean like the Nouners, the founders of Nouns, the founder of Loot, founder of Zora. I mean like Jacob, Dom Hoffman, Punk 6529. Yeah, I mean just like all these different kind of like feel like they're super ahead of the curve on NFT thinking and community thinking, and structures, and I think a lot of that inspires like the evolution of how the crypto creator economy evolves.
Nice. I love it. All right. The second question here. What will the price of Bitcoin be 10 years from now?
Can I do it for ETH?
You can do it for both.
Do it for both. Yeah.
10 years from now, maybe we'll be through like, I don't know, hopefully we'll be at the top of a cycle. And it'll maybe be like two to three away. Like, I want to say ETH maybe 50 to 75K. Bitcoin, I guess, 250K.
Interesting.
200K.
I love when guests like really like do the mental
really
math to like but it's interesting because we don't obviously ask too many guests the price of ETH. We've asked a couple, but that's the second most aggressive ETH valuation that I've heard. David Hoffman, I think, had the number one. He said 100K for ETH in 10 years, which was in early 2021. So interesting stuff.
I like that. We got a comparison really out of you, because you're basically saying, I mean, may not be doing my math right, but I believe you're saying ETH is gonna, I mean, at that point, the flippening has probably happened. So
maybe, I don't know. Is that the difference of the supply?
Well, you just 10x Bitcoin, and you
I 5x, basically 5x from the top of Bitcoin.
Yeah, for going from the top. Yeah.
And then like,
and then for
more than
ETH,
10x,
you like
10x,
12x
like
or something.
7, 10x on ETH from the top. Yeah.
I can't wait to 10 years from now, watch this clip.
Yeah.
Like us taking so much time. I'm like, we're way fucking off.
Everybody's wrong. All right. Third and last question here. What is the most underrated coin or project of any kind in all of crypto?
I don't know if it's underrated anymore. Actually, I got a good pick for you. Most underrated project in all of crypto is Chaos by Songcamp.
Cool.
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah,
100%. It is like, so the way I put it on like kind of the spectrum and why I think it's so important is that like, so yeah, it's like basically Punks is like, you know, what didn't really have commercial license. Apes added it. Obviously Punks has it now. Nouns went like CCO. So like, I would say Nouns, but like, you know, over time, like, yeah, it could be Nouns for sure, but it's pretty appreciated. I mean, it's pretty popular at this point, right? But like that evolution of like digital ownership and like, I guess, quote unquote IP is like been the kind of major innovations that have like kind of created breakout new categories of NFTs, and why those are kind of like such key moments. And then, well, obviously Punks just being the first. And then the other thing I would say is that I haven't, like, something that's so interesting I haven't seen innovation in yet that I saw with Songcamp Chaos, is it's 77 artists working together to make the art for the generative collection. So like 77 people, like, and there was like a whole creative operation process around like how they all collaborated to make that synergistic artwork. And it's music. So it's music NFTs, which is also, I think, exciting because music NFTs is kind of still waiting for its like, or not waiting, but like is still developing its, you know, kind of collection area, its generative collection side of things. And I think that, you know, it's like, not only is it a huge step for music NFTs, that like this project was able to create this high quality of content in the way that they did. And like, I mean, there's 48 songs total. It's basically like a massive album, and they're like incredible. Like the songs are like there was a point where like I was just only listening to like Chaos songs. And it also has like that crazy sort of social innovation where I think like is a precedent that like basically collectives of artists is more powerful than any single artist in their creation. It's like, how does one artist compete with 50 working together? And I think that there's kind of like a tech there that's been uncovered. So yeah, I would say, you know, it's still minting. So yeah, how's that for underappreciated?
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
Yeah, definitely going to check that out. Well, thank you so much, Brett. You've got a gift at explaining this stuff. You do it in a very good way. And, you know, this summer we've had a lot of Web3 music episodes, and I feel like this one's kind of the cherry on top of bringing everything together. So thanks so much for joining Alf and I on this episode of Show Me the Crypto.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's been awesome.
Thank you for listening to Show Me the Crypto. Please make sure to subscribe as well as rate and review this podcast.